Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. We come to you guys with some breaking news coming from Sweden, the capital of Sweden, Stockholm, as there has been a bus ramming into the crowd at just outside a bus stop in the central part of the city near the University of Technology. We are getting some updates from the police. This has already been identified as an aggravated manslaughter, but the police are refusing to give us the identity or any sort of information about even the victims, let alone the actual suspect. But we're going to give you guys all the updates on this, as we have multiple casualties to deal with, unfortunately, and we're going to get your reaction during the live show as usual. First things first, local media initially reported the incident itself, which was actually, well, at the beginning, 3 confirmed dead, unfortunately, several injured in the bus ramming that happened on the Valahalvagen street near the city's University of Technology. In a statement, the police said that the incident has now been classified as aggravated manslaughter. We don't know much else about what exactly happened in terms of motive or what happened with the driver. We do know that the bus was, and the driver was actually off duty, so this was not a routine route with any sort of passengers. Having said that, there is some other updates coming in terms of the reaction from the political side, but we will be waiting for that. So these are the scenes. We also have the live feed coming to us in the next few minutes from Stockholm. This footage, of course, is the latest footage over the last few minutes, but the emergency personnel are working amid, of course, the twisted wreckage as they respond. This is actually one of the images that we have as they respond to the bus crash in central Stockholm. Debris is scattered across the street as the authorities are managing to take control of the area. Of course, the whole area is now being closed off in order to for not just for the mess to be dealt with, but of course the deeper investigation into exactly what has been going on. This is reported as yet another just simple incident. Now, as I said, the off-duty vehicle, which carried no passengers, was just randomly driving and mounted the curb before slamming into the crowd at the bus stop during the rush hour, prompting immediate emergency response. And witnesses report hearing scraping sounds followed by a loud bang and screams as victims sought refuge in a nearby shop. Another eyewitness said that the driver seemed to have been doing it intentionally because of the targeting, but others are claiming that this might have just been, control might have been lost, but we don't exactly know. We can show you a quick video from on the scene. That's just afterwards when the emergency personnel came. It's horrific. Of course, a number of people unfortunately have now lost their lives after this crash, and a lot of people obviously are wanting to get some answers in terms of why the off-duty bus was being driven like this and where it was going. Now, we have a statement from the police in Stockholm, which we can now read out to you guys if we have it ready. Yeah, there we go. Okay. In a statement, the police have said, at this time, we are not commenting on the number, gender, or ages of those affected. Interesting. They also added, police, rescue services, and ambulance are working at the scene. And due to the operation, we have to withhold some information. It is being investigated as aggravated manslaughter. The bus driver has been arrested, but that is a routine in such an incident. Now, usually, in order to keep everybody aware, informed, and also keep things stable, they tend to give some information about the victims, especially obviously those who might have loved ones or friends that might know them or might be looking for them. Usually they give some information about the victims so that people are able to get in touch with the emergency services. In this case, that is not the priority for the police in Stockholm, and said we are dealing with the victims. But those who have died, well, clearly they have to find a way to get in touch with their families. So unless they've found some identification on them, if they haven't, that means that the loved ones have not been informed, because if they don't know who the person is, how can they get in touch with their families? So they have to probably wait for people to get in touch with the police and the hospitals to then tell them, oh yes, your loved one is now dead. So that is the difference, and this is quite interesting because it kind of shows the difference in terms of the way the authorities respond to these things and the way the media respond to it in different European countries. The way they do it in France or in Germany is slightly different to places in Sweden. The way they do it in Britain is completely different to all of them. Sometimes better, but most of the time worse. But if this were in the US, the whole thing will be much more transparent and much more quicker in terms of the communication coming from the authorities and the local sources as well. Now, there has been a lot of speculations about safety in capital cities in Europe, especially in Stockholm and in places like Paris and Berlin, especially as you get closer to Christmas, because there's a number of things to bear in mind. Accidents, of course, happen, but you also have criminal gangs. Brussels, also another major capital city that is experiencing a lot of issues. Criminal gangs on the rise. We have problems with, of course, terrorism, extremism. We have problems with just general crime, or as the media will call it, isolated incidents happening a lot as you get closer to Christmas. So you've got different things to worry about if you do live in major cities. Just general muggings and stabbings and this, but one of the biggest problems is, of course, the criminal gangs that used to deal with other gangs, but these days civilians also get caught in their fightings, which doesn't really keep people safe. And as you get closer to Christmas, you also have to deal with, of course, the potential Islamic attacks. And when you look at cities like Stockholm, and I can show you, for example, in case you're not familiar with how it looks these days, because of diversity, let's just say. This is bring it down. There we go. So the diversity of cultures means that it will be very difficult for the authorities to keep an eye on everybody, because the identity of a lot of people are not going to be able to be confirmed. And that has become a major problem, because when you have a lot of people, especially in the rise of illegal immigration in major cities, you don't know the identity. And you have criminals to deal with, you have extremists to deal with, you have terrorists to deal with. Then you also have anybody that could do anything. And not in this case, of course, when it comes to the bus driver, but generally speaking, you have a lot of issues to deal with. And the police, the resources, are not going to be able to be at full capacity. And that is another major problem that people have if they still live in major cities. We have our live feed now, I believe, from Stockholm. There we go. Yes, this is now our live camera, thanks to our team, which we can bring you guys. Let me just double check. Yeah. Okay, so just waiting for some sort of confirmation and update on the well-being of the victims of this bus ramming, or aggravated manslaughter, as the police now call it. We still don't really know exactly who the victims are. We just know that 3 were confirmed dead, and the others are still injured. We don't know how many are actually, unfortunately, in a life-threatening condition or not. So we'll get the confirmation on that shortly. But having said that, I'm going to get some reaction from the live chat while we're here. Okay, first one. Christmas markets empty in various towns and town squares with no Christmas trees. This Islamophobia is a bitch, ain't it? Hopefully, your boy Shah makes it happen over in Iran. I mean, there is a big issue when it comes to, of course, as I said, when you get closer to Christmas, but that's a whole different problem to deal with. But the issue, the bigger problem is that we always had random things and various different types of threats in big cities. It's been the same for the past 100 years because major cities, one of the problems compared to smaller towns and villages is that you have a huge population of strangers. That's the point of cities. Whereas in smaller towns and villages, everybody knows everybody. You know the neighbors, you know that person, you know the shopkeeper. But so it's always been a problem. But the issue is that we found a way to deal with major cities until the late 90s, late 20th century. We've had issues in the mid 20th century in big cities like Chicago, in New York, in London. Then that was dealt with because the political leadership and also the mayors and the police found a way to decentralize cities. At the time, New York, Chicago, London, Paris, they became slightly more devolved into different sections. So, for example, London went back to being treated as a collection of villages. So if you actually see the history of London, it's not really one city. It was never one city. In fact, you had the city of Westminster, you had the city of London, which is now we call it East London, and the rest of it was the suburbs, and you had different villages, the village of like Hampstead or Greenwich and everything else. So we found a way to deal with that. In mid 20th century, the authorities went back to deal with capital cities like that. That made it a lot easier to be able to break up cities when it comes to policing and everything else. So you had good local policing. But since then, late 20th century and now 21st century, not only the populations are exploding, but everything's become more centralized, which means that as I said, with the rise of migration, with the rise of criminal gangs, cities are just a big hub of strangers. Nobody knows anybody anymore. So you can't really expect people to be okay with the fact that the police right now in Sweden are saying, well, we're not going to give you the information about the identity of the victims. Well, those who are dead, unless, as I said, they have picked up their identification, their ID cards or whatever, how are you going to be getting in touch with their families? Because you don't know who they are. But if you actually give some sort of details to at least the local press, it might help. Anyway, so Rusty, thank you so much for your super chat. And AD says a lot of bad press with public transport all over Europe. A shame, especially as they don't want us to use our cars. That's it's kind of it's a lose-lose right now, because considering that the establishment in Europe, the European establishment, are very much pushing for more public transport. I think we lost the live feed now. Yeah, they're pushing for public transport. They are fighting against their private ownership of cars, and it's for more government control anyway. But they're saying this in the name of environment, but they don't seem to be actually doing anything about the basic infrastructure of public transport either. That's a whole different conversation to be had. Ivan says, must have been one of the Mamdani's free buses. To be fair, like every time I'm in Stockholm, I can't really get into the capital cities in Europe. My culture, my mentality is very different to the European side. I don't get European capital cities. There are two exceptions. I do like Copenhagen, relatively. Amsterdam is okay, just to visit for like a day. Most of them, I don't get the European mentality of centralized, everything is public services. So the public services, public transport and things like that is in Europe, not the UK, in Europe, is there's a lot of attention on it. So people could rely on it. It's great. But I'd rather have my, well, if I could afford it, I'd rather have my own, what was I going to say, limousine. But you can't really have a limousine in Europe because the roads are not that large. Anyway, yeah, I'd rather have private cars rather than public transport, but it's not really a norm. Also in Copenhagen, they really push for Bicycles. Everybody cycles. It's chaos. Well, actually, Amsterdam is the same. That was one of the problems with Amsterdam. Apart from parts of Amsterdam being dirty, like Paris, bicycles everywhere. They annoy me. Europeans love it. I don't get bicycles. It's too much. Too much. All right. What else? Queen says, seriously, this is getting ridiculous a long time ago. Well, it has been getting ridiculous for a long time now, yeah. Barbara says, were they starting to celebrate the run-up to Christmas? Do you know that the irony of every time we talk about Christmas, every year on this channel, especially again in Europe and the UK, is we always talk about the threat. Are people safe going to Christmas markets in big cities? Actually, not big cities anymore, because if you live in Germany, it could happen in small towns, attacks, right? Not this thing that happened tonight, but terrorist attacks, stabbings, bombings, car rammings, shootings, everything, right? But the issue is, Christmas markets have been neglected now in a lot of cities, not everywhere, but started to happen. In the UK, over the last few days, because apparently Christmas starts in November these days, right? The first place that has already started Christmas markets and everything else with a lot of security, is actually, ironically, Birmingham, the second largest city in the UK that has a 30+% Islamic population. We already have the Christmas markets there, but again, massive security everywhere. But London is slightly behind, so I'm not really sure. It feels like Christmas markets are safer now in Islamic towns and cities than non-cities. I don't know what's going on, but we'll find out when, I think next week, London will be starting its the biggest Christmas market, which is called Winter Wonderland in Hyde Park. Which, to be fair, nobody actually considers it as a Christmas market because it's got like a fairground and fun fair sort of thing with rides, but it's actually basically a large Christmas market. But every year, the Winter Wonderland in Hyde Park in London, they are making it harder and harder for you to even go. So now you have to get a ticket. Then you have to also queue for security, extra queue for security, and checks and this and that. But even 10 years ago, you could just go in, just walk in, easy. But it's everything is just becoming an inconvenience. But it's for your own safety. They're just bringing in more security and more control. It's stupid. Marlene says you're compromised to see. That doesn't mean what you think it means, because what you mean is you are, as in YOUR''E. YOUR doesn't mean you are. So what you mean is to see. You are compromised, then that will be correct. Yeah. I'm not really sure what compromised me, but yeah. It's probably the Jews. The Jews. Oh, all these Jews. Stop compromising me, Jews. Sweden used to be the safest and happiest place to live. WF and the EU Union have really, really effed Europe. So Sweden was safe. But based on statistics, and I love the Swedish people, if you get offended, I'm sorry, it was not the happiest place. The rise of depression was massive in most of Scandinavia. But yes, it was definitely safest. So they were content at best. But yeah, the historic depression was major in big cities in Scandinavia. But it's definitely safe, yeah. Dan says, damn, even Tusi is compromised now. I know. I tried my best not to, but... you wake up one day and you get compromised and like, oh, what do I do now? I'm compromised. Oops. I'm not really sure how it works. I don't know how it happens. I don't know how. When is the moment you know you're compromised? You just like go to the bathroom. Like, oh no, I got compromised. Oops. Blue Sapphire says, watch the UK government try to enforce the digital IDs because Christmas markets need to be vetted. So actually, I already have an update on that front. The British government have already introduced a new thing for the Christmas period. The digital IDs are coming in regardless anyway. That will be later on. But they have been piloting the facial recognition surveillance, which they have been using for a long time, but they have been piloting it at some major events this Christmas in the UK, and actually most of the European countries as well, because they all did it at the same time. They are increasing the use of facial recognition, but they have new technology as well, combined with AI, which would make it a lot easier for them for the authorities to be able to know your identity based on facial recognition. So there's going to be, over time, the system would essentially create a situation where, as your face is more recognized by these systems, it will actually have a memory, just like a normal AI, like ChatGPT has memory. It will have a memory to know exactly where you've been and what you've done. Whether you have an ID or not, they can still basically find out where this face has been. Commentator says, 2C, get on Battlefield 6. Yes, I will be later on, because today's slightly busy. After this live stream, we're going to have to come back to tell you guys about what's going on in the US. Chicago, chaos is happening. But in terms of the European problem, I do have an update on that, because the safety of people in Europe is down to the political establishment and the authorities. One country in Europe, at least, there are a number of countries, by the way, like Hungary and others, but one country is leading on liberty and security. Because most of the countries tell you could either have liberty or security, and people always go with security. So, but Poland is a perfect example of how you can have liberty and security at the same time. And on 2CTV Plus, on our independent streaming service and our platform, we have actually prepared this update. Where is the... Yeah, we have it. Okay. And we have this for you guys, in case you haven't seen it. It's a new show called Why Poland Works. Let's watch a few seconds.
Europe faces a migration crisis, but one nation refuses to bow to Brussels' demands. Poland's right-wing opposition isn't just building walls, it's building a movement for sovereignty and strength. Once called extreme, their vision is now inspiring a continent. In the next minutes, we'll show why Poland's resistance, led by right-wing parties, makes it Europe's boldest defender. In 2024, the European Union's Migration and Asylum Pact demanded member states accept refugees or pay heavy fines. Poland's pro-European Union government, led by Donald Tusk, leans toward compliance, but the opposition? They're fighting back.
So that's our latest original series on 2C TV Plus called Why Poland Works. You can watch it's a 4-episode show. You can watch that and find out more about how you can save Europe if you follow what Poland is doing. And you can join 2C Plus today by using the promo code RIPBBC to get 50% off to annual memberships by going directly on 2c.tv, or just find the link in the description. So yeah, 50% of annual memberships. Use the promo code RIPBBC and download the 2CTV app as well. All right, so if I quickly go back, there's a couple of comments I have missed, unfortunately. There we go. Kemal says, IDF confirmed Hezbollah assassinated Elias Hazrouni. And Marina says the UK is turning fast into Russia. More government control, yeah. And Ivan says, well, they need to identify the Christians. Now, but Poland has no intention of leaving the EU. Go figure. Yeah, because of the bribery. That's how the European Union, as a racket, I did a whole conversation about this yesterday on this channel, about how the European Union are holding Central European countries and Eastern European countries as hostage by partly bribing them and partly scaring them into thinking, without us you won't have protection. So that's why they still remain in the European project, which is completely chaotic. But one day they'll learn. But for now, they think they are better off, which is completely stupid. But Poland has shown that you can still be in the EU and you can still fight for your own people and your own sovereignty by just ignoring the European Union directives. They get punished every now and then, but they don't care. They say, well, we have to put Polish people first, and that is the only way we can do it. Now, so yeah, the investigation on the ground in Stockholm continues to find out why the off-duty bus was being driven like that by their driver, to find out slightly more information about the actual motive, because so far it's an aggravated manslaughter. But we'll come back with more information. We're going to come back shortly live from Chicago as the pro illegal migrant protesters are now attacking the ICE agents again as the authorities fight back to do more mass deportations. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.